Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're really going deep on some really fascinating news and ideas. We've got a lot of material to cover, spanning ethics, philosophy, even some stuff on art and film.
And it's really quite striking how these seemingly very different topics all kind of come together, They offer some fresh perspectives on a lot of what's happening right now.
Yeah, definitely. So let's jump right in. Okay, so first up, ethics and morality. We've got this new book. It's called Moral Articulation. It's by Matthew Congdon. And basically, it explores the idea of, developing like new moral concepts.
And Congdon's work here, well, it's especially relevant now when you look at like all these ethical challenges we're facing. The ones highlighted in these Philo Notes blog posts, the ones about sexual exploitation and LGBTQ plus rights, and the role of religion in ethics.
Oh, yeah, those are some tough issues. So basically what we're seeing is like a real need for some new ethical frameworks to help us kind of navigate through all these modern complexities, right? And what I thought was really interesting is Congdon, he actually suggests that one approach is to like incorporate elements of empathy and vulnerability into moral decision-making.
Yeah, that's a really key point, especially when you're thinking about things like, the issues in those Philo Notes articles. Power dynamics, individual experiences. These things often play such a huge role.
Yeah, no, definitely.
He basically argues that the more like traditional ethical theories, they just don't quite cut it, They fall short in addressing all these nuances. So he really wants us to think about, how empathy can shape our understanding of right and wrong, especially in a world that's changing so rapidly.
It makes you think, that's for sure. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about the plight of the poor. So there's this super interesting AI-generated essay on Michael R.D. James's blog. It compares the situations of the poor across different historical periods, like from Socratic Athens all the way to the Kantian Enlightenment.
Wild, right? It is, and it asks this really critical question. Have our societal values and economic structures actually made things better for the poor throughout history? I mean, really. And you know what? The AI actually found all these striking similarities in the challenges that poor people have faced across these very different societies. For instance, both Socratic Athens and the Elizabethan era, they both had this huge gap between the wealthy elite and the impoverished masses. And that's despite them having totally different social and political structures.
Wow. It really makes you think. It suggests that, like, even with all the advancements we've made, some things just never change.
Right.
There are these, like, systemic issues that just keep persisting,
Yeah, for sure. The AI even makes these parallels between the social safety nets, or the lack thereof, in ancient Rome, and the debates we're having now about welfare programs in modern societies.
Huh. That's a really interesting connection.
It really encourages us to step back and examine, are we actually learning from history, or are we just stuck repeating the same patterns over and over again?
That's a great question. Okay, so I think it's time to move on to something a little bit, a little lighter. Let's get into some philosophical reflections. We got some quotes here from philosophy bits from some pretty big names like Thomas Paine, Plato, Oscar Wilde.
Yeah, those are always fun. They offer these really timeless insights into human nature, government, the search for meaning. They really make you think.
Okay, so this one from Thomas Paine really hit me. He said, "It is important that we should never lose sight of this distinction. We must not confuse the peoples with their governments."
Yeah, that's a powerful one. And it feels especially relevant today, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Paine's really emphasizing the importance of holding governments accountable to the people they're supposed to be serving. It's a principle that resonates across centuries and political systems. He's reminding us that the real power, it lies with the people. And, that message is still inspiring all sorts of movements for social and political change today.
Okay, here's one from Plato that's, it's definitely thought-provoking. He said, "Too much freedom will evolve into slavery."
Oh, yeah, that one's a classic.
I know, right?
What Plato's getting at is this really delicate balance between individual freedom and keeping society in order. You know what I mean? He's warning us about what happens when freedom goes unchecked, suggesting that it can lead to chaos and eventually some form of tyranny. It really encourages us to think critically about where freedom ends and responsibility begins.
I need something a little more upbeat after that one. How about this quote from Oscar Wilde? He said, "Live. Live the wonderful life that is in you. Let nothing be lost upon you. Be always searching for new sensations. Be afraid of nothing.
Yeah, Wilde's all about embracing life to the fullest. Being open to new experiences and facing your fears head on. It's a call to live authentically and to, just grab every opportunity for growth and discovery.
I love that. Okay, so let's shift gears one more time. Daily News is reporting that this philosopher and artist couple, Adam J. Graves and Suchitra Motai, have a film that's been nominated for an Oscar. It's called Anuja.
Now, that's a great example of how different disciplines can work together and really enrich each other, don't you think? Graves, he directs the Denver Project for Humanistic Inquiry, and he's all about exploring these connections between philosophy and film and literature and art.
It's amazing to see how all these things can come together. So the film itself, it tells the story of two sisters who are facing this really life-changing opportunity.
Yeah, and it really delves into some complex themes: family, opportunity, and the unique challenges that girls face in different societies. It's a great example of how powerful film can be in raising awareness about these social issues and connecting with people on an emotional level.
Definitely. Now, speaking of exploring different perspectives, Warp, Weft, and Wei shared some news about the growing field of Chinese studies.
Yeah, it's really important to understand these different philosophical traditions, especially those from the East. Especially in today's world where everything's so interconnected.
Absolutely. So the Scientific Development Charitable Foundation, they're hosting their 10th summer program in Chinese studies, which is amazing. It sounds like a great opportunity to really immerse yourself in this rich tradition.
And you know what else? Anthem Press is launching a new series that's all about ancient East-West philosophy. They're really trying to bridge the gap between these two really influential schools of thought.
These resources sound incredible, really incredible opportunities to engage with Chinese thought. I'm particularly interested in that Anthem Press series. Like, imagine what we could learn from exploring where ancient Eastern and Western philosophies kind of intersect.
Yeah, it really highlights how philosophical inquiry isn't limited to just one culture or region. Exploring all these different perspectives can really challenge our assumptions and give us a broader understanding of the world.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I want to circle back to those Philo Notes articles for a second, specifically the one on sexual exploitation and harassment. It's just such an important topic, one that we really need to keep talking about.
Definitely. And that article really shines a light on how systemic this issue really is. It explores how things like power imbalances and societal norms contribute to a culture where exploitation and harassment can happen.
It's really disheartening.
Yeah.
But it also emphasizes how important it is to have consent education and create safe spaces for victims to come forward, which is so important. And it also dives into, the role of media and technology in all of this, like how they can perpetuate harmful attitudes and behaviors.
Right.
It really makes you think about how we could be using these platforms to promote positive change instead.
Absolutely. That article is a real call to action. It's urging us to challenge the status quo and to really fight for policies and practices that protect people from exploitation and harassment.
Yeah, 100%. The Philo Notes piece on LGBTQ plus rights is also incredibly relevant right now. It highlights the ongoing struggle for equality and the importance of inclusivity, which is something we should all be striving for.
For sure. And that article really examines these legal, social, and cultural barriers that LGBTQ plus individuals are still facing today. It's a reminder that the fight for equal rights isn't over, not even close, It encourages us to think about how we can help create a more just and equitable society for everyone, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity.
And it stresses the importance of empathy and understanding, which is something we could all use a little more of these days. The article also talks about the intersectionality of LGBTQ plus rights with other social justice movements,
Right.
highlighting how all these issues are interconnected,
Yeah, it's a good reminder that progress in one area often depends on progress in others. It's all connected.
Okay, so switching gears back to that AI-generated essay on the plight of the poor, it really got me thinking about the cyclical nature of poverty, like how it just seems to repeat itself throughout history.
Yeah, and remember, that essay's AI author, it analyzed tons and tons of historical data to make these comparisons. One of the most striking things it found was how societal attitudes towards poor people have basically stayed the same throughout history. It's crazy. Whether it's blaming poverty on personal failings or seeing it as an inevitable outcome of social structures, these perceptions have influenced how we've dealt with poverty for centuries.
It's amazing to see how these historical patterns are still shaping how we think about and deal with poverty today.
Definitely.
The AI even pointed out how some economic policies that were meant to help alleviate poverty ended up actually making inequality worse in some cases.
Which is kind of a paradox, right?
I know. It shows how complex this issue really is.
Yeah.
It makes you question if the solutions we're coming up with are actually effective.
For sure. It really challenges us to think outside the box and come up with new approaches.
Okay, I need to lighten the mood a little bit here. Let's get back to those philosophical quotes from philosophy bits. I always find them so thought-provoking, even though they were written ages ago.
Yeah, there's just something about them. They offer a glimpse into the minds of these brilliant thinkers, and they invite us to engage with these questions about human existence that have been around forever.
Okay, so here's one from Plato that really resonated with me. He said, "We can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life is when men are afraid of the light." What do you think?
Powerful, right? Plato's saying that ignorance isn't bliss. He wants us to seek knowledge and understanding even when it's hard, even when it challenges what we believe or exposes uncomfortable truths. It's like a call to embrace critical thinking and step out of our comfort zones to find enlightenment.
That's a great way to put it. Okay, this next one from Oscar Wilde. That's one of my all-time favorites. He said, "To live is the rarest thing in the world. Most people exist, that is all."
Classic Wilde, always so sharp. He's challenging us to be more than just existing, to truly live. Go after our passions, build meaningful relationships, make choices that reflect our values. It's a reminder that life is precious, and we should live it with intention and purpose.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Hmm.
Okay, let's talk more about that Oscar-nominated film, Nāgārjuna, by that philosopher and artist couple. I'm really curious to hear more about how they combine those two disciplines.
Well, the film's story is actually deeply rooted in philosophical ideas. The directors use the choices the sisters have to make to explore the whole idea of free will versus determinism.
Interesting.
It makes the viewer really think about their own agency and how much control they actually have over their own lives, and what forces are shaping them.
Wow. It sounds like they really packed a lot into this film.
Oh, yeah. They also delve into the complexity of human relationships and the ethical dilemmas that come up when what you want clashes with what society expects.
That's something we can all relate to for sure.
Definitely. It's a testament to how powerful storytelling can be in conveying these really profound ideas in a way that's engaging and accessible.
So true. I'm really intrigued by how they used visuals to represent abstract philosophical concepts, like metaphors and symbolism.
Yeah, that's one of the cool things about this film. It shows how art can be this powerful tool for exploring complex ideas and making them resonate with a wider audience.
It sounds like a must-see.
Definitely check it out. Okay, and finally, let's touch back on those announcements from Warp, Weft, and Wei about the growing interest in Chinese studies.
Yeah, it's so encouraging to see this growing recognition of the value and relevance of Eastern philosophical traditions.
Absolutely. And that Sinological Development Charitable Foundation's summer program, it sounds like an amazing opportunity to really dive deep into this rich and complex field.
I might have to check that out myself.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
should. And that Anthem Press series on ancient East-West philosophy, that's going to be an incredible resource for anyone who wants to explore the connections and differences between these two major schools of thought.
Yeah, it's really cool to see how these initiatives are like bridging cultures and helping us understand philosophy from a more global perspective.
Totally. And studying Chinese philosophy can teach us so much about ethics and metaphysics and political thought. It's like getting a whole new lens to view these concepts through.
It's a good reminder that we can find knowledge and wisdom in all sorts of different traditions.
Right. And that engaging with those traditions can really broaden our understanding of, well, everything.
So true. Okay, so I think it's time to start wrapping up this deep dive. Let's take a minute to think about some of the big themes that came up today.
Okay, yeah.
We talked about how ethics and morality are always evolving, the challenges of poverty, the wisdom we can find in philosophical quotes, even the ones from centuries ago, and how art and film can help us engage with all these complex issues.
And of course, we talked about how exploring different philosophical traditions, like in Chinese studies, can really enrich our understanding of the world.
It's been a really thought-provoking journey, and I feel like I've learned so much.
I think we all have.
So before we go, what's one final thought you want to leave our listeners with?
Well, in a world where we're constantly bombarded with information, it's more important than ever to develop those critical thinking skills. You can't just accept everything you hear at face value, right? You got to question things, look at things from different perspectives, and most importantly, engage in thoughtful dialogue. Don't be afraid to have those tough conversations.
That's such a great point. We can't just passively consume information. We need to be active participants in shaping our understanding of the world.
Exactly. And never forget that learning is a lifelong journey. Stay curious, challenge your own beliefs, and never stop exploring new ideas.
Well said. Thank you so much for guiding us through this deep dive. It's been an absolute pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
The pleasure was all mine. Until next time, keep those minds engaged and those ideas flowing.